So continuing with the next question. Yeah, someone wanted us to explore the concept of consciousness waking up versus the ego making efforts to wake up. So what's the difference between consciousness waking up versus the ego efforting to wake up? Very good question. Like to start?
Yes, it's was just thinking about it as you were reading it. It's so interesting because, this raises the question, who or what wakes up? Who or what is asleep? And it is consciousness or awareness that is asleep and that wakes up. It is not the ego. It is not the feeling of I. It is not this sense of me as a person. When we hear these ideas and we encounter these teachings, initially, in most cases, I think we can say, most people, there's a tendency to assume, oh, that means me. I can wake up. I am now interested in waking up or becoming enlightened, or whatever you want to call it. But in fact, that is a sense of identity or a projection of identity in the mind. So the mind does not wake up. The mind is just the mind. It's just like a container or a jar in which reflections happen, thoughts happen, emotions happen. Reflections of awareness take shape as thought. That's kind of what the mind is. And so there's this feeling of I that has established itself in the mind, which we think of ourselves as that I, that's who me, that's who I am. So, and nevertheless, that's where we start. And usually we start from there. I am now going to make some efforts to try to be more awake. And that sounds valid, and it is valid on its own level, but it is still something that's taking place in the mind as a sense of I. And that is not consciousness. You can notice, what's interesting is you will notice that you're doing that. You can notice that there's an I in you that wants to wake up. And that which is noticing that is actually what can wake up, can be more conscious. So does that prompt some thoughts in you, Mihai?
Yes. No shortage of thoughts about this stuff for Mihai. Yeah, and I want to clarify here, I mean, a fourth way, they don't use the word ego. So however, just like we equate in the previous part, consciousness, awareness, presence, being, ego, separate self, as they call it in modern day non-duality or the direct path, separate self, the separate sense of self. In the fourth way, false personality, or the imaginary picture of myself. I like this a lot. The imaginary picture of myself, the imagined sense of myself that is imagined by consciousness, which is asleep. When it is asleep, then it imagines itself to be something. First of all, it starts with imagining itself to be the body. It's unavoidable. We get this body, and then everybody, our parents, look at us as the body, and they say, oh, little Mihai, oh, he's so cute. Oh, look, he has big eyelashes or something. And then the consciousness gets, oh, I have eyelash. Oh, I am cute. Oh, so imagine a picture of oneself as the body, imagine a picture of oneself as the mind, and then the embroidery and the twisting. Imagine myself as being like a male. Yeah, I'm a man. I am a white man. I'm an educated man. I'm a Romanian man. Then it gets, I am a better I know better, or I am not good enough. So all this, anyway, all of this, and it gets like really deeply embroidered like a Persian carpet, thick, with the imaginary picture of oneself. All of this mean the same: ego, false personality, imaginary picture of oneself, separate self, ego. So Ramana would say the me thought or the me feeling, the me thought, the me feeling. So I totally agree with this. We start from the imaginary picture of myself. I was 16. I found this book. I thought that who I really am is this teenager that found this book. This teenager was inspired by these books, and then me as a teenager, I want to attain this thing what Guruji was talking about. I want to become conscious, and so there's no way we all start there, as the confused sense of self is still consciousness. The real self is confused. So from this confused sense of self, as the body and the mind, now this is trying to wake up. So we start like that, and I like that in the fourth way they explain that it's normal. I mean, there's no other way, and they explain how actually this part of us that is interested in higher knowledge, is interested in seeking, like what they call in modern day non-duality, the seeker. So this seeker, they call it there's a part, it's the part of false personality, part of the imaginary self, which is attracted to truth, and they call it magnetic center. And then if this magnetic center is mature enough and not lost in all kind of seeking all over the place and never recognizing something that is coming, something deeper, something higher knowledge. So this magnetic center brings us to a teaching that is ideally a higher teaching, coming from a sage or from a conscious school. So this magnetic center now kind of stops seeking and is like, oh, I found it. I remember I probably had the same thing when I found the teaching and I found the school. That school, I was like, yes, I found it. So then I stopped seeking, and the seeking transformed into, I got to work on myself now. So this, which is still the Mihai, me, the imaginary sense of myself was now becomes a practitioner, a worker on oneself, and is trying to observe and to try to develop more sense of attention and not lost in imagination, not identify. So the imaginary sense of self now, there's a part of it is interested in the work and is strengthened. It becomes stronger and stronger as if one is earnest and sincere. Yeah. And then anyway, in the fourth way, this from seeking to practitioner, and that practitioner goes through various stages of getting more serious. So, but it's still at the level of the mind, so to say. Yeah. So it goes to various stages, and at some point, as this goes through various stages, there will be some glimpse, or there will be some realization of, oh, wow, I am not who I thought I was. and then it's kind of like there's some shift somehow, that somehow there start to be glimpses that I'm not this white, male, whatever. Is that the realization that consciousness, or the presence, is that which is here, the real thing, and the story of me, it's it's a story.
It's an interesting I'm just reflecting more on this question. It's a very honest question. And I say that because it is hard to divorce ourselves, you might say, from the feeling of I. This is really at the heart of everything we're talking about. There's this feeling of I, this feeling of identity, even a feeling of being, which, and I think what happens is, I think it's fair to say that by virtue of realizing that you are being, that gradually transforms. This feeling of I transforms, as you were saying, Mihai, into a dedication as a seeker, and then transforms even further into a genuine practitioner, we could say. You use that word. Genuinely, sincerely, consistently trying to be more present, more often. And it's coming from a genuine place. And there is a feeling of I in that. It's more pure, it's deeper, it's more authentic. You can feel it in yourself, it's more real. And ironically, it is still not pure consciousness, pure awareness. It is still a feeling of I. But you can't necessarily jump all the way out of, you can't just, consciousness cannot just jump all the way out of the feeling of I. This does happen for some people. These are dramatic awakenings. And it can actually happen for a moment or for a little while. But inevitably, people find their consciousness is back in this feeling of I, and that's okay. So this question, it kind of speaks to both ends of the spectrum, where you're completely immersed in the feeling of I, and then you're completely free of that as consciousness. And there's a huge distance in between those two, you could say, or there are several dimensions of being between those two. And so this is the progression of awakening. This is the path. This is the path. It is this gradual, constant transformation of I, from false imagined I to a real genuine sense of I want to be here more often, on and on, to even to transcending the feeling of identity as I. But it's hard to fathom this when you're in it. It's hard to fathom what that means. You can think about it, you can try to intuit it, but until consciousness steps out of that, it's not a reality. It's still an idea. And it can sound like a theory to someone who has not experienced it. So I'm hesitating here. I'm searching in something and to try to convey that the aim is not necessarily just to get rid of I or step out of the feeling of I. The aim in part is to align the sense of I, of me, more and more with present, wanting to be present, wanting to be conscious, wanting to be here. And not as a task you give yourself, because it's a genuine urge. There's an urge in you. Consciousness somehow knows it is asleep. This is kind of ironic. Consciousness knows it is asleep. And then it knows when it starts waking up. And there is a sense of I there that gradually diminishes. But so we have to trust a deeper and deeper and deeper sense of I. And interestingly, this is what Ramana Maharshi, he even said this: who am I? And ultimately, when that question is posed, consciousness sees the mind posing that question in search of what it thinks is I. And it's all happening in the mind. I'll toss it back to you, Mihai.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I wish I was exposed to the self-inquiry as the Ramana style earlier. I maybe would have saved some time, but it's all perfect. Because it's a and now let's say if I'm teaching some of the fourth way, I would definitely include that question, because so also I recently did some videos about the interdependentness and the link between these practices like being present, observing, resting as awareness, meditation, self-inquiry. How it seems like they're like four different things, and which one do I do? But they are kind of interconnected and they help each other. So anyway, basically meditating along a certain way where the mind gets a little bit more quiet and one is less checked out in past and future and is more here, and posing this question, which is a thought like, what am I? Who am I? I liked modern day non-duality, this question, like Rupert said, that this question has been used so much that we kind of became jaded, or has so much philosophy to it. So it might be fresher to ask the question, what is aware right now? It's the same question. What is aware right now? What am I? Who am I? Somehow it's almost like drop that and not expect any, not be interested and not believe anything that may come, because initially we drop this question and then what am I, and then they will pop all kind of eyes. Initially they will stuff like, oh, I'm a man, I'm a American, I'm educated, I'm fat, whatever. Then it will get, if we get more sophisticated, we get, I am divine presence. I am. So all this, so we are instructed, Ramana says, whatever comes, that is a thought, that is an I, it's a thought that arises, and I am aware of it. That's definitely this thought, I am divine presence, that's a thought. Am I this thought, or am I that which is aware of it? Or they have this additional question, like when a thought comes, okay, what am I? A thought comes, it says something. The additional question was, to whom does this thought arise? So like, and even at some point it gets like, to me, man, to me. And I was like, okay, what am I? So basically the mind will keep off-gassing these eyes, this explanation, these labels, these things. But the idea that if we are really interested in this, and this practice, this is useful only if we are really interested. If we are not interested, forget about it. But somehow in this, it decants, the illusion kind of settles, and at some point, like we asked in the question, what am I? The question itself quiets the mind. And then one may be revealed that there's no thought. All thoughts are bullshit. But something is aware. So then that is some kind of that silence, this aware silence is the answer. So now then at that point, there's a glimpse of that's really special. It's a glimpse, or a kensho, they call it in Zen, or that could be very dramatic, like with emotions or angels or something, or can be totally subtle. He even didn't realize nothing happened. But that is so powerful. It starts to, something happens, almost like the house of the imaginary self has got a big hit, bam, and it starts to be a crack in it, and that will keep cracking. Anyway, to me, self-remembering makes sense. It takes a whole other dimension, more than just being mindful or being present, like the power of now, being here now, being attentive to the present, being mindful. But it's not clear who or what am I. It's just me being mindful. But when we have that glimpse and the aware silence or the aware background is revealed to itself, and then we go back into the mind and we identify it. But then when the impulse comes to remember oneself, as is in the fourth way works, self-remembering now, it's almost like remembering that, and not mental remembering, but like that comes back online. I like this thing, being the consciousness that we are knowingly. I think that's self-remembering. So yeah.
I was thinking while you were speaking, not thinking, but the image was coming to my mind, Mihai, when you were speaking, about the idea of a mirror and how the mind is essentially a mirror. And what happens is we perceive, or consciousness, I should say, perceives, and immediately reflects in the mind. A perception reflects, and then that forms into what we call thought or emotion. And so to me, this is a very good analogy where if you stand in front of the mirror and you look at yourself in the mirror and you try to stay aware of your image in the mirror, and you're kind of saying, who am I? Who am I? And you're looking at yourself in the mirror and you're genuinely asking this question. But it's a different, subtle awareness when you realize there is something in you looking out of your eyes, and it is seeing an image. That's all it's seeing. It's seeing a reflection that looks real. And you're sure that's a reflection of who you are. And it's not. It's a reflection of the body. It's not a reflection of that which is looking. Because the mirror, and in the case of the mind, can only reflect an image. It doesn't reflect that it doesn't reflect the light, we could say, in this analogy. And it is very interesting to stand in front of a mirror and look at yourself and ask this question, and then look into your eyes, your own eyes in the image, and realize there's something behind your eyes looking out through your eyes. And it's on this side of you're on this side of the mirror. And that's where you are. That's your being. You are being on this side of the mirror. And the rest is just a reflection. It's actually backwards too, which is also interesting. We're seeing a backwards reflected image of ourselves in the mirror. That's not actually what we look like. But this is a very good analogy, which is used often in many teachings, because it speaks to this fact that when we can see it, we think it's real. And we even think that's who we are too. We think we are real. And the same thing is happening in our mind as is happening in the mirror in the bathroom. Consciousness, there's this feeling, this word I, and we think consciousness, it's not that consciousness is confused, it's that consciousness is not aware. And because it's not aware, a confusion arises in the mind that thinks this is who I am. It's the result of consciousness being identified with the mind, and the mind then starts querying and acting as though it's I.
So
I recommend this though, about standing in front of the mirror for a long period of time and looking, and then trying to realize where the looking is coming from. And also what you can realize is you will never see the looking. You will never see the source of that looking. However, the source of that looking can be aware of itself. Looking. So this is it can be a very interesting a little exercise. Yes, Mihai.
Yeah, we talked about this, that the difficulty of basically if we try to catch a glimpse of what we are, of the being, as an object, that doesn't work. It is like the trying to pinpoint, to put the finger. We can't put the finger on the finger. Or the eye, the eyeball. The eyeball sees everything, but it cannot see itself. I mean, you need a mirror for that.
And even then, it is not the eyeball that is seeing itself. You're looking through the eyeball.
Yeah.
The eyeball does not
eyeball,
see itself. Yeah.
right. The eyeball is like a camera lens through which consciousness sees, because you can see actually there are images. One can see images with the eyes open or eyes closed. And then also there are people that are blind. My grandpa was blind from the war, and I have a friend now who cannot see temporarily. And they realized, oh God, it's like not the eyes that we're seeing, it's that which is aware that sees with or without the eyes. But I want to go back to a question here. Or before I go to a question, we talk about Ramana here. And so Ramana was saying that as we do this process of, let's say, purification of this confusion, and consciousness being more aware with that, with any technique, whatever, all kind of techniques, then we are different people, so different techniques work for us, for our configuration. So first they say that the me thought gets more purified. So the distortion in the mind about oneself, that is the first level that gets more clean. So somehow it gets more clear that I'm not a thought. That which is aware is not a thought. And then also the even the mind gets more clear about this, is less confused. So then some misunderstanding meant, the me thought kind of erodes first. And we can even have deep glimpses of what we are. But then what's more pernicious and more tricky to look at is the me feeling, which is and which is actually now goes towards my my work, and also trauma, and this the feeling of me as a state of an emotional state, as a I'm angry, I'm there's some I'm sad. There's and also this is connected to the sense of separation due to this consciousness being unconscious of itself, and due to this confusion and embroidery, it creates a lot of somehow the consciousness contracts in other, I don't know if it contracts, but there's a sense of self-contraction as like a me, as a something. And also through being shocked and being in this world which is not the kingdom of heaven at all, we are shocked. Even before being born can be shocked. So that shock, that kind of creates the sense of me. I can't be myself. I have to be good. I have to be nice. I have to hide. They will reject me. I was abandoned. You see, that's more than a thought. That is some energy with which consciousness is identified with as the sense of me. And you can't philosophize that. One needs to really go at the level of the body. Jean Klein, Francis, or other methods is to really bring awareness to that. Actually, it's a painful, there's a lot of pain body in there, painful sense of me. But one needs to be pretty stable and strong strong with consciousness to meet that and witness that. And in that process, it will kind of loosen up a little bit, and it will be again clear that, oh, even this, I was hurt. Can I find this I that is hurt by being abandoned or being beaten? Where's this I? Then you see, there's this in the stomach. It's like this, okay, actually it's not an I, it's some energy that is being noticed. You see the identification. So different phases of like the loosening up the me thought and then the me feeling.
I think we can say, Mihai, this is occurring to me as you're speaking, that identification, what we call identification, could be seen as a contraction of consciousness. And that contraction of consciousness creates contractions in the body and in the mind, in the four centers. And so sometimes I think it's why we may need to work on the contraction that's in the body and mind in order for the contraction of consciousness to release, to become less identified. Now, it's also true that you can pop out, consciousness can pop out, and as soon as consciousness is no longer contracted, let's say, no longer identified, that immediately has an effect on the centers, on the body and mind, and that can neutralize, let's say, a contraction in the body, in the mind. But normally, not normally, I think in most cases, in many cases, it happens the other way around. Especially in your case, Mihai, you work with people with trauma or serious injury or serious loss, intense injury, that there's so much contraction in the body and in the mind that consciousness cannot realize itself. It's too tangled up in the body and in the mind, and so it has to untangle, disassemble from identity first in order to realize itself. I'm just saying this out loud. I know you and we talk about these things. I'm not as familiar with what you do in your work as a psychotherapist with somatic body work, shadow work, and all that, but I just wanted to put that out there.
I think being born on this, as Gertrude would say, is ill-fated planet. Why? Because we are unaware of what we are and unaware of the relation with the Creator and all that is. So being born in this planet where there's always a bunch of wars all the time, ever, constantly, and being raised
in us
by
too, in us too. It's the same phenomenon,
yeah,
on a different scale. Yes,
and being raised by people and educated by people that are unconscious, that's traumatic. So there is this contraction is like a contraction. I like this the Ashanti teacher. It's like they said there are almost 3 levels: the level of the mind, the level of the heart, and the level of the gut. And it's almost like this actually imaginary sense of me, this embroidery and all of that. There's like a fist. It's like a fist, and then through spiritual work, through inner work, this fist is like loosen up a little bit, and then it's like, but we can't, if we can't do it like that. That's why actually, yeah. And then even it go like that, it goes back in. So we have to keep prying this open, and prying it open. And at some point, I went through some deep experiences using some 5-MeO DMT, I think the most powerful psychedelic, which somehow has the effect of it's like to violently shut down the sense of me, the me thought, me feeling, and this, and but it's really can be, for many people, can be like the most like terrifying, atrocious, torturous experience, because it happens all at once. I felt that, oh my God, underneath all the psychology and underneath the emotion, there is like a reservoir of terror and a sense of struggling to survive as an imagined separate being without God and trying to survive. I really felt it and sensed it. There was this gut level contraction, clenched. It's almost like living one's life trying not to poop my pants. Really, it felt like it's this to hold on to, which I could see that is all my ancestors and all humanity has this thing. When I understood that, I realized all the clients that are coming to me and everybody, they have this underneath, and it's really, yeah.
Well, the fourth way, you may or may not confirm this with me, but to me, this is the instinctive center, basically, and it lodges. There's a sense of I lodged in there that you described it so well, and it's goes unnoticed to us most of the time until all these other layers are peeled away. But that it's there, and that's what a human being is really an animal with a mind and that has emotions and thoughts. Mm-hmm. And consciousness is up against that because it's such a powerful force that it's compelling. It's persuasive to be identified with that and to feel the sense of I in that. But even what Adyashanti said, he was really talking about the different centers: the mind, the intellectual center, the heart, the emotional center, the gut, the instinctive / moving center. Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm. That's what I love about this. This is why it interests me how the fourth way and these non-duality teachings and all, they overlap. They're talking about the same thing. And once you see the connection, they do enhance each other. They help each other. They broaden the picture. They deepen the view. And they open up, they can somehow propel consciousness beyond the mind more nimbly when you see how they're all connected, these teachings.
The person who asked that question, the initial question where we started riffing and jamming on it.
You mean in the last segment?
This segment, like, that's the what was the question here?
About consciousness waking up versus the ego?
Versus the ego efforting to wake up.
Yes.
It was stirred a little bit. This person went to a silent meditation retreat with a respectable and very popular non-dual teacher of these days who also has a strong Zen background. And then she was telling me afterwards, I asked her, hey, how did it go? How did it go? And she said, I didn't have an awakening. I didn't have an awakening. And then, anyway, so then she was telling me that there, people were meditating a lot, and then at some point in the evening, they will talk, and somehow she witnessed this phenomena that somehow many people, like every day, a bunch of people, they would like pop, and the teacher would say, oh yeah, and then they would pop like they had an awakening. They had an awakening, and then they will walk on the stage, and the teacher could recognize that and will confirm their kensho. It's called in Zen, or a glimpse, or satori, which is like a glimpse, like a glimpse. Yeah. And then somehow she felt like that she felt like that now. And so this is tricky business, because I think this can be overrated. First of all, one can have a higher state, like where, let's say, more emotional, more love and quiet mind and pleasure in the body, bliss, and some sense of like, oh, it's all love and God. That actually is a mystical state that comes and goes. I remain the same as me. I'm me the guy who had the revelation of the divine. I mean, it is beautiful and it is essential. Yeah. Now there is another kind of state where there is like a glimpse, like where realizing that, oh wow, realizing of not being the body, not being the mind, and somehow it's a temporary or a glimpse of consciousness realizing itself. And that is from one angle more useful, because that may still go away, usually it goes away, but there's something remains there. There's some deep, there's an understanding of oneself. It's different. So actually, so I work with people, they come to me from the Kilby inquiries, and many people who are serious practitioners, and they've been dedicated to meditation all their life. And I would say 1 in 4 or 5 people, they come and they tell me that they had an awakening, and they wake up like years ago. But they come to me because they have suffering and problems and relational patterns and addictions and depression and all kind of regular stuff like everybody else. So I'm asking them to identify where they're at. I said, hey, so tell me about your awakening. And they tell me a memory of something. And then I ask them, so after that, what is left? What is still here after that? You know, so the second case of glimpse about our true nature is much more useful than realization of the divine as an ego, and then it goes away, you know. Anyway, so this can happen a lot, but then, you know, due to less of spiritual maturity, lack of spiritual maturity, lack of being warned by the teacher, somehow the ego appropriates that. You know, I mean, it happened to me a long time ago at the meditation retreat. There was some long periods of deep presence. And then my ego was like, oh, wow, I think I got it. I think I'm enlightened. Oh, wow, yeah. And this was coexisting. These thoughts were coexisting with some higher state of being for a long time. And then I was meditating there, and there was this, oh, wow, yeah. So I'll go home, and maybe it was this like total deceiver. The ego was trying to appropriate this vanity in 4th way, my vanity feature and specialness. You know, there was some aspect of my 4th personality, specialness, vanity, look at me, I'm better than you guys, was creeping in to, because actually I didn't quite have a glimpse of what I am. I didn't. It was just a higher state, but still as a me having a higher state, me getting this thing. And then, although I was meditating there, it started to have this, oh, I'm going to go to a satsang with Adi Ashanti, and I'm going, there's all this imagination. As I'm going, and he's going to see, and he's going to say, yeah, Mihai, you know, this or that, so that I'm more special, and, you know, I'm now something, and, you know, so that's a trap. And this person that asked the question, actually, she sensed that, like, there's almost like, hey, I popped, yeah, and then, yeah, this is overrated. So when she came to us, and I told her the story, I really liked when I told Peter, like, hey, you know, she came and she didn't have an awakening, and we were both like, good for you. In a way that one can hang one's hat there and land on some illusion, you know.
And we weren't being facetious when we said that. It was more that it was more honesty. She was honest about the fact, because she probably wanted to have one. And I would assume, without knowing any of those people who were there were people there who genuinely wanted to have an experience. And because of that, they did. But as you say, this is a good word, appropriation. And this is normal. The mind has no choice but to appropriate the perceptions of consciousness or of awareness and turn them into thought And then by virtue of identification, for identity to shape itself around all of that. This is normal. This happens in what's called the spiritual path all the time. It happens to all of us, where we think something happened and now we kind of morph into a new sense of identity around it. And that has to happen in order to see that it's happening, and to see that that which is aware of it happening is the real, is reality. And that which it's happening to and is experiencing the happening, that's I, that's identity, that's the mind, that's the body, that's the four centers. And this is part of seeing all of it. So it's not a bad thing. It comes down to the question of, in the end, no one can be honest with ourselves except ourselves about what we're experiencing. And I would say it is much more easy to fool oneself in this arena than it is to realize the truth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was our soul friend and Zen master Suzuki Roshi was saying, yeah, if you trick others and you deceive them, that's not ideal. But if you deceive yourself, then there's no more medicine. And it's interesting that actually this person, when there, she knew already that she was she had enough spiritual maturity to like say, hey, I'm interested to strengthen my meditation practice so that I'm less busy all the time, and to deepen this, and not care so much about this awakening. But in that context, it was so much like in her face that people like this, and then there's like in the culture of it, which I think it's some symptom of our quick the Kundalini in 3 days, which is actually dangerous, or awakening at this in 3 weeks, or come to this retreat, and that is bullshit. I must say, it's bullshit. A serious transformation, it requires like long time of persistent effort and consistent dedication for 99.9% of the people. And for 0.0.1% where it happens all at once, they have a lot of work to do afterwards to integrate that.
And there's a third scenario, I believe. I've never met Eckhart Tolle. I don't know, but the story he tells, that he went, he had that thought about late in the night before he fell asleep, that he had enough of this, and he wondered, I can't remember the details, but it was more like he saw the eyes talking to themselves, and he realized, wait a minute, who's asking the question and who's suffering the dilemma? My supposition is, and again, I don't know Eckhart, with all respect to Eckhart, and but my feeling is he had actually undergone a long period of preparation, and there was consciousness and awareness witnessing his years of depression and his years of struggle and all the things he went through in his life. And so it didn't happen, bam, suddenly out of nowhere. Even if he was not cognizant. And I'm guessing he might agree with this. He might say that, yes, in fact, there was a lot that went into that, because there was a lot of suffering, and suffering was the preparation. Well, I think we maybe have exhausted this question. Maybe we can turn to one of the other questions, or maybe do that in another segment.
I just want to say one last thought here.
Yes.
I remember David Hawkins, who actually I'm very grateful for him, helped me get out of a spiritual community that was not healthy. So he actually had some similar. He was in a low state of deep depression and despair, and he felt like he was in the pits of hell. And actually, he was an atheist, and he was a very intelligent, convincing atheist who was convincing other people who were religious that this is bullshit, and he was doing a lot of drugs and substances, and he got lower and lower and lower and lower. And then he tells the story that in the pits of despair, he had this like plea, like from his spirit, like something along the lines, if there is a God, I ask for help. And then it all kind of crashed on him. And then when he woke up, there was everything very different. Yeah. Also, other people, they have this, but at the same time, they've been studying for 20 years. They've done a bunch of stuff for 20 years or 30 years. So there's this case. Also, there are cases like Ramana or Robert Adams, who kind of just attained like a full awakening, liberation, and stable when he was 15 in a math class. And so, but he says, and Ramana too, hey, I have done many a lifetime of this practice. And it was just right there. So you can't verify this, but that's interesting to be said. And one last thing, and I'm in Zen, Dogen Zenji, the patriarch of Zen, he was questioning about this. He says, hey, if you sit zazen, or if you meditate in order to attain enlightenment, you are wasting your time, completely wasting your time. We meditate in order to experience our true nature, not to attain something. Because when we have this, it's like a carrot. When you try to attain something, it's always somewhere else, some other time. It's not here, some other time. So, and it's unavoidable because we hear these stories and it's juicy, but at some point we need to give up. Give up this. It's an imagination,
Or see through it, see through to the truth, the reality that's I that's doing that. That's the mind and body doing that. It's the four centers trying to, as you say, reach something, achieve something.
Yeah. Actually, you can't give it up. They say give up the seeker.
Right. No, and then because you never awaken in the future.
Yeah, like they say, oh, give this up. It's not possible. And from one angle, that party knew it's useful. It's meant to bring us to a point where you hit the wall. And so that's very useful, to hit the wall and to give up hitting the wall. And the giving up of that, or giving up the seeker, comes from a deeper understanding. Yeah. And then it's just something changes. All right.
Okay. Thank you.